Hello, and welcome back to the very first episode of Rage of Aquarius for the year 2024. I am one of your three hosts, Andre Burke, and I am sitting here with my legendary co-hosts, Rachel Capurso of Aeolian Heart Astrology and Frederick Woodruff of Woodruff Astrology.
Hey, Rachel and Andre, good to be
Hello.
back and Happy New Year to all our listeners.
Yes, Happy New Year. So nice to be
Yeah,
here.
Happy New Year. Happy belated New Year. I'm like, we're like that deadbeat dad that calls you at like 11:45 on your birthday. Wish you a happy birthday with the New Year's over here. So,
Sounds like a scene from Mad Men,
yeah.
which I've been watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don Draper getting to
Yeah.
the kids. Oh, great.
All right. So we're here to discuss we're gonna open up old wounds, old family wounds,
Oh my God.
as we're wont to say, those of us from dysfunctional families are wont to say. And we're going to talk about the ingress of Pluto into Aquarius. This was one of our first episodes that we recorded last year. I believe it's so rare that it's only available on our YouTube channel. You can't even get it on the podcast, the podcast platforms,
Why?
because of the subscription level that we are at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm too cheap to pay for the top subscription level to keep it in circulation. Once I pay that, it'll bump it up and it'll appear again. So
Well,
yeah.
YouTube's fine. I mean,
Yeah. So hopefully you're listening on YouTube, and you can just go and cross-reference with the last year's episode on Pluto and Aquarius and see, if we're consistent. And if you want to, say, well, you said here one thing and you said here another thing, and catch me on my inconsistency and hypocrisy, you are more than welcome.
so this episode's more like some footnotes on
Yeah,
Pluto and
yeah,
Aquarius.
definitely. I would say, yeah,
It's a
footnotes
little bit
and
more
yeah, end
granular.
notes, yeah, an appendix, yeah. And because we got a glimpse of what it was going to be like last year, and then he went back, he retrograded back into Capricorn, and it was really weird because I noticed that the beginning of last year was all the rise of AI and what speculation about all the industries that it's going to disrupt. And then when he went back into Capricorn, I noticed that it just kind of became like same old, power, the collapse of the existing power structure, government power structures. There was the October 7th invasion of Israel. Just a lot of the same narrative that we've been playing out. And so I'm interested to see if now that he's back into Aquarius, if we're going to start talking about, if the cultural focus is going to shift again to that, to media and tech and its sort of envelopment of biological life, as they would say in my
Well,
graduate.
it wasn't, it was not on, it was uncanny how right when Pluto went back into Aquarius, all of this meltdown with media did start, um, and was, it dominated the news there for that ingress that happened. And then it's still, of course, the fallout's happening, but it's been quite radical with magazines, newspapers, especially local papers, all of that continuing to collapse and in such a like major flame out. I mean, it's been happening bit by bit, over the last like 5-6 years. But then it seemed to supernova right when Pluto got into Aquarius.
Yeah, like the Los Angeles Times is they just I forget how many cuts they just made, but it was huge. And there's also on top of the layoffs, there's this walkout because the people that are remaining are protesting. They feel, unjustly treated. And of course, that's all true. But when it comes to mainstream media outlets, I feel very strongly like, they have brought it on themselves and they should have seen the writing on the wall a long time ago. And there's also, just not only have they betrayed so much trust and revealed themselves to be, just servants of corporate interests, to put it lightly, um, they are also outmoded and outdated by the fact that we have so many different means of communicating now and gathering information and sharing news. So there is just really no need for them anymore. We don't need those centralized gatekeepers for our news anymore.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I think though they did try to keep pace with what was happening to their industry as the internet got more and more traction. And then of course they became dependent on social media because that was then driving traffic to them. But
Mm-hmm.
then social media decided to close the floodgates down, stopped linking to news because they got sick of having to moderate things. And they just, as their money got challenged, they wanted to keep everybody in their gated community. So nobody was going to the news sites. And then I think that to survive, they saw, well, everything's red, everything's blue now, so we'll cater, to the red audience or the blue audience, to the Fox audience, to the MSNBC audience. And that kind of speaks to what you were saying about being, messengers for the corporate world.
Right.
But I think I mean, for me, living in a small community, it's really sad losing like our local papers. And then there's, there literally where I live, people go to Facebook to get news about like what's happening on the island that I live on. Because there's
Mm-hmm.
a page there with like, I don't know, 12,000 people that all live here, go there. And, so it becomes sort of, like this strange hybrid of like a gossip central combined with police reports, police blotters, bake sales. It's just like such a weird hodgepodge.
And then like
But
the all caps MAGA grandmas.
Mm-hmm.
oh, definitely. But like the piece I wrote on my Substack about this thing with the media, the alarming thing was is people get their news from TikTok now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. TikTok and Twitter and yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I think is possible, at least with local news, is that there could be a restoration, sort of a renaissance of that kind of thing. It's in an awkward phase right now, but I think that like local news level of information could benefit from the era of Pluto and
I
Aquarius.
think you're right, and it's happening at least as I've seen examples of it, like on Substack, where certain
Right.
Yeah.
cities have set up Substacks, and then they've got paid subscribers that's paying for reporters. So you're right. I think that's really exciting. I love that idea.
Absolutely. I do too because the thing is that the meta narrative or like the monoculture that was really, definitive of the 20th century and was made possible by mass media is slowly being, or actually rather rapidly now, breaking down, atomizing, and it's certainly a messy time. It's
Mhm.
definitely chaotic. It's not the world that we were raised in, but at the same time, the need for integrity and trust in some kind of news remains, and the local level is a place where something like that can actually reemerge, and in that regard it will be far more traditional, because news was always local, and there were always, since the time of the Gutenberg printing press, there have always been little subcultures that have arisen which publish information that local people need and that could actually become something really powerful and very interesting. And just as an example of something that I learned from the Nexium documentary, there was the cult Nexium, if you guys are familiar, which is a huge story, and I can't go into the whole story of the cult. But the thing that was really disturbing about the cult leader and how long it took for him to get investigated by the FBI was the fact that many reports, very thorough and sincere reports, were done by the local paper, the Albany Reporters. They had investigated this guy and found many, many things that were worthy of further investigation, that were worthy of law enforcement getting involved. They had done their due diligence, they had actually acted as true journalists, and they were ignored. And this went on for years. This wasn't just one Albany reporter. This was many, many, many articles, many, many years of really good local level investigative journalism. And it took like 15 years for the mass media, New York Times, to actually cover the story.
Right.
And so what I loved about that though was that, hey, the local journalists had done their job and there was a huge record of this really good reporting. And so in a time where all of the power that something like New York Times has starts breaking down, what I see is that the local level of meeting the needs of one's community, finding stories that matter to people that live in a specific area, and actually, restoring some kind of trust and integrity. That can happen at a small scale, local level. And yeah, maybe print newspapers will be mostly passe, but that doesn't mean that local level journalists can't have hubs of information that concern local people. And it could be something that influences, like, you create a network of local news, local journalists that have a different set of, or actually just restore the ethics of journalism and begin to actually, it's very traditional actually, doing things the way that they were done before with digital space included,
Right. But I think to back up a little for the listener that might be, more of a student or novice, it's important to explain how Aquarius really represents sort of the nervous system that links together the constituents of a group or a tribe or a community or whatever. And that's why we're mentioning this movement of Pluto into Aquarius
Mhm.
with that old kind of bloated corporate news system, which got so
Mhm.
centralized as the internet took over, why, that's all, continuing to fall apart. But
Right.
to your point, and that's a very Pluto one, things that are spent and sort of, I don't know, decadent or overgrown get wiped out. And then there would be a nascent start of something new, like you're saying. Maybe it starts out smaller with community papers and
Mhm.
people, so the cycle comes back around
Yes,
to you
exactly.
know
And
I think we should all start our own almanacs. It's where it's
Yeah.
going. I
right.
think
Yeah.
that'll
And
be,
I mean,
you know
TikTok is, I am afraid of TikTok myself. I can't stand it. It's so loud and obscene
it
and
is nuts.
it's nuts. I can't get into it. However, this might be a place where a true citizen journalist can get a start, can actually like kindle something. And it's always possible that somebody who's really called to do some great journalism could end up using TikTok in some,
I mean, I've already seen it.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've already seen it. The last year, or maybe it was a couple years ago, a story went viral on TikTok that I've known for, people in the know have known for years, but then you've got like normie art students talking about it, which was the uh influence that the CIA had over the modern art movement of the mid 20th century, specifically with Jackson Pollock and the initiative to prop him up as the ideal American artist, because he represented freedom, liberty, unrestrained, no boundaries. Look, our artists just drop a bucket of paint, as contrasted to the Soviet, what did they call it? Something realist. But it was the Soviet, the realism of the Soviet propaganda machine, where everything was all very, hard lines and formal and figurative. There was no expression in it. But because it was TikTok, the story got promoted as the CIA was behind the rise of the American of modern art in the 20th century, which is not the full story. When you actually dig a little deeper, this is the problem with something like TikTok journalism. You don't get the nuance of the story. You find that they were working, there were agents that were contacting art historians, and these art historians were given grant money and wanted to do what they could to help the cause of, the anti-communist cause worldwide, and they wanted to help promote artists that wouldn't necessarily be seen. So there actually was good faith behind this story. But the story went viral because an art student did like a 2-minute video on it on TikTok.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot. I mean, but another thing that sort of fits into this theme of, I guess, novelty with the news, because TikTok, is kind of crazy as far as a platform goes for delivering information. But, look at the New York Times. I mean, when I studied what really has shored them up financially, it's really not so much people wanting to subscribe, to the paper of record, but they bought up Wordle, that word game, and then they've blown up their recipe cooking section and packaged all that as a separate, incentive to take out a subscription to the New York Times. So they're really kind of using novelty again in a way to, shore up their bottom line. But that's kind of what kept them afloat.
Yeah.
And Washington Post, on the other hand, is really struggling now to keep going.
Well, maybe you can get a free Prime subscription with Washington Post now.
Oh my God.
That's probably coming.
Yeah, I was good, man. It's really bad. It's really bad for mass media when the New York Times has to rely on the football phone model to sell subscriptions.
Oh my God, right.
And that's what saved Sports Illustrated back in the 80s was where it was they started selling these corny ass football phones.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now,
not even the
so
swimsuit edition was selling issues. So
they deserve it. I'm laughing the whole way.
so look at the flip side of Aquarius, which is Leo. So we've got Pluto into Aquarius now, which is opposing Leo. And it's interesting, as Rachel was saying before we started recording, that Hollywood, which is, I mean, that's Leo ruled, is in such disarray and sort of collapse, really, with the, what is your take on that, you guys?
Oh God. Well, I just found out last night that this year there is going to be half the amount of monthly releases, roughly on average, half the amount of monthly releases. In Leo season, dead center of the summer blockbuster season, there's only going to be, where last year there were 8 major releases, there's actually only going to be 4 major releases.
Wow.
Yes, and it's like that every month. You go back, some months it's like, last year, in May of last year, I think there were 14 major releases because they always put out the big glut at the beginning to start the summer season. this year there's only going to be 4 major releases in May.
Mhm.
So that's
Interesting.
yeah, that's way more than a 50% drop. Honestly, it's been I haven't been able to keep up as much as I would like as far as my actual quote unquote insider contacts are concerned, but my feeling on the collapse of Hollywood, and unless either of you wanted to take the floor
No,
for
no, no.
this one,
Keep going.
the 2 best movies of the last 2 years, by my estimation, my own personal estimation, were foreign films.
Yeah.
They were not the foreign films that you go to see at the Laemmle or at the art house. They were blockbuster foreign films. It was for 2022, it was a film out of India called Triple R or RRR. It's on Netflix. I can't recommend it more highly. I recommended it to a friend last night and I told him I was hesitant to recommend it because if I recommend this movie to you now, I can never recommend another movie again. That's how great this film is. I don't think that it could ever be surpassed in terms of it's everything you want out of a great blockbuster spectacle. It's got
Well, okay, I'm
action,
writing this down.
yeah,
Oh my
action,
God.
romance,
Musical.
music. It's got musical numbers. It's Bollywood,
Yeah.
.
But like also it's so old Hollywood too. Like it has that charm of old Hollywood movies that,
But what wasn't it highlighted, like, I think in the last Oscars, the
Yeah,
Academy, one of
best
the
song, I
songs,
think.
right?
Yeah, best
Mhm.
song. And the song, oh God, the song's incredible.
It is. I remember them
Yeah.
performing it. It was off the just crazy.
It's one of the man, it just makes you sit there going like, why aren't we making movies like this, and
Well,
it's
what's the
music
one
on
for
top of it
20?
all. And then
What's 20? Go ahead.
2023 was Godzilla -1,
Oh, right.
which was had me I went to see it with the group, I went to see it with my A24 friends, and they were completely blown away. We were all, it was just, it was goosebumps and chills and, that kind of like, that like, I'm not crying, you're crying kind of like, climactic movie response.
Mhm.
And so
Did
what
you
this gets,
hear where they're doing special screenings of that in black and white?
yeah, I did. I actually, I'm trying to, I want to see if I can't catch it because it's both of these movies were so great. I was like, I have never wanted to go back and watch a movie the next day like this since I was like a little kid and I got the Aladdin VHS tape and it was
Well,
like
how do you see it
24/7.
correlating like
So,
to
well,
Pluto Aquarius,
yeah,
like
this is what I
going
want to get to is
international or?
yeah, well, is the national cinemas, America is unique uh in the sense that we have only one quote unquote national cinema,
Mhm.
which is Hollywood. We have like indie films, but those eventually got assimilated by the machine.
Mhm.
Whereas, if you look to a country like India, they actually had 2 national cinemas. They had the New Delhi cinema and then they had the Calcutta cinema. So it was Bollywood. They basically had they had a whole they had an art house and they had a blockbuster
Mhm.
industry. It's the same with China. There's mainland China, which produces these, which produces the movies like Raise the Red Lantern, these
Yeah,
great
right.
nationalistic epics.
Right.
And then there's Hong Kong, which is producing the genre pictures, the John Woo, the Bruce Lee, the Shaw brothers,
The stuff the rest of the
the
world
stuff the
likes.
rest of the world likes. So there's always this kind of like prestige, there's these prestige companies, and then there are the or prestige industries, and then there are like the populist or nationalist industries. And what only other nation that I'm familiar that has done that it's adopted a similar model to Hollywood is Japan, because they just have like the Tokyo cinema that you'll see the same Toho fanfare at the beginning of an Akira Kurosawa film as you will in the start of a Godzilla film. But what I see happening is with Aquarius, they're being, because Leo is all, it's the spotlight, it's the centralization of of focus. You
Mhm.
know, look, the spotlight is on the stage and you're looking at the star. There's Judy Garland, there's Mickey Rooney, and they're dancing their little, you know, their little underage amphetamine hearts out. um but with Aquarius, it's now it's diffuse, you know, it's decentralized. It diffuses that spotlight. You know, we go from a single spotlight to, you know, like a David Fincher flickering fluorescent light. You know, and what I think is possible, and we're already seeing it with companies like, as weird, as crazy as it sounds, Angel Studios, who last year distributed The Sound of Freedom. These rogue studios popping up in places like, you know, Texas or Utah, where I believe Angel Studios is based, or in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mhm.
And I think that we stand on the precipice of potentially seeing decentralized film industry, something that would more resemble like what they have had in India.
Local art
Yeah,
scenes.
local art scenes, basically. Yeah, local art scenes on a massive scale, because it's cinema.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's like that, it's that kind of, it's that joke, it's that really, oh god, it's such a, it's one of those jokes that's like played before you even say it. But the joke that quote unquote, you know, the conservatives are the new punk rockers. But it's so, the company that is actually spearheading this movement is a conservative Christian company that put out, you know, one of the most controversial movies of the year last year. And I haven't seen since, I don't know, since maybe I was like 14 and Fox Searchlight put out Boys Don't Cry. I haven't seen a film get so much bad, you know, controversial press than Sound of Freedom. You know, and back when I was, you know, back when I was getting into indie films, it was every year there was just the hottest new controversial film, overly violent, overly sexual. You know, the religious right is lining up around the block to protest it.
You know
And
what this reminds me though of is when John Denver gave that great testimony to stand up
exactly,
for free speech.
yeah,
And it was like the thing that actually just put all of those manic, satanic panic Christian moms to sleep,
yeah,
because
exactly,
John
because yeah,
Denver was like, no, these records deserve to
yeah,
be
because Frank
released.
Zappa and Jello Biafra were somehow not getting through to them.
Well, the
So
other thing, oh, sorry, go ahead,
no,
Frederick.
I was just going to move on from this topic, but just I think to kind of sum it up, I think it reflects this one aspect that I always track with Pluto, is that it has this strange like effect where things that are very large
Mm-hmm.
and massive, when Pluto like touches them, they suddenly get shrunk down to like a tiny size. And then tiny things like, say, you know, individuals that would come together to do, you know, cinema, like you
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
were describing, suddenly like blow up. Because I know there was another Christian thing too that came out that just like was ubiquitous and a huge success. And it again was like you were talking about, like, you know, private monies and a group coming together, of course,
Mm-hmm.
all Christians. But you know, I think so that's another way to see, you know, the shift that's happening
Yeah,
in regards to this industry and stuff.
Absolutely.
totally.
Yeah. And there was, I wish I had wrote this down, but there actually was an attempt to start, because the one thing, you know, the thing I've been like talking about with my mom, I saw Sound of Freedom. It did not alarm me. It didn't ruffle my feathers very much. I thought it was actually, it was a well-made film. My major complaint though was just that its story was incredibly formulaic. If you know, it followed
Right.
a basic formula for its screenplay. It had a real like Blake Snyder Save the Cat. You know, you know, open with the same shot that we close with, and all that kind of all that, you know, boilerplate stuff, I guess you'd call it. And so I was talking to my mom, and she's like, "Oh, but you have to, you have to agree. It was really well shot, well acted. It's not." And I said, "Yeah, it was, but it's still missing this like one key element where it didn't really have the most multi-dimensional story." Um, and that's like the one thing you see when you see a lot of these brewing independent companies, is that they're not nabbing, they haven't yet nabbed like the Scorseses or the Tarantinos or the Sofia Coppolas, that are gonna really tell like really make really rich films that really get under your skin and spark a dialogue for decades to
Right.
come. But there actually was an attempt to start one of those studios, and I wish I had the name down. I'm really sorry I don't, in the 20 teens, so about 10 years ago, and it was going really well until the pandemic, and then it went bankrupt. And it was based, I believe, it was either Dallas or Austin, maybe it was Houston.
Hmm.
God, I sound like such a Californian now. It was somewhere in Texas.
So I think I want to
And
move on because of our time thing.
yeah,
Rachel had brought up a topic that I thought was really fascinating, having to do with the digital ID uh, program in India, which
yeah,
is
Oh
definitely.
gosh.
actually, I mean, the name is so chilling that oversees this. It's called the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in India, wanting to put, digital records, digital contracts, digital signatures, all under this rubric of a digital India bill, which everyone there will have to be living under and abiding by. And I don't want to sound like some crazy, the mark of the beast is finally here, we've all got a number.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty alarming, especially with what Rachel was sharing, which I'll let her go into. She researched this more about the fallout and
Yeah.
the actual Plutonian effect of identities being annihilated,
Yeah.
that were slurped into this um, system.
Hmm.
So say more about that Adar, which was the name of the program, I think.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
called Hadar, and I was really shocked when I found out about this because it actually never showed up in my feed. It was something I just
me too. Never knew about it.
yeah, I just accidentally sort of discovered it. In fact, I still, before December of 2023, when I was researching Pluto's entrance into Aquarius, I thought the digital ID thing was something that was still far off in the future. I thought that this was just something that was swimming around because guess what? The World Economic Forum, they're always talking about this. They keep drumming up enthusiasm for this kind of idea. They really have big plans. Technocratic bureaucrats love this stuff and they're constantly talking about it. And it was shocking to find out that they had already implemented this in India. And so how it started in India over the last 7 years, um, they first they first offered this digital ID program to the most vulnerable citizens. So obviously India is a huge country and there's a lot of poverty there. And so the people that live in very rural areas that really do lack access to basic resources such as food, water, and also medical care, they were basically, asked to trade their fingerprint and their iris scan for entrance into this digital ID program, and they were promised in exchange a tremendous amount of help, resources, food, medical care. And so naturally, the most vulnerable citizens really all agreed because it sounded like better than desperate suffering. But then over the course of 7 years, they began to the government of India started forcibly getting everyone in India involved. Middle class citizens, old people, pensioners, everybody was threatened in one way or another with the threat of not being able to access either medical care or their pension. This was one that was really, that was the real strong arm for like the older citizens. You were not going to be able to get your pension if you don't sign up. And so somehow they got 95% of the citizens of India on this digital ID system, which is not like a social security number. It contains everything. It is your medical records. It is the deed to any property that you own. It is all of your bank accounts. It's also your friends and family. Like it's your passport. It's everything. And so this extremely vulnerable amount of private information is all accessible in one place under one number, one digital ID. And what has happened in India with this program is a disaster, which is strange because when you read about it from official channels like the World Economic Forum and the people that, you know, are at the top of global governance, they still talk about this program as though it is a great success. But what has happened is that some people have slipped through the cracks. They have just, there's been glitches and they've been lost. They don't exist anymore. And the Indian government doesn't even consider them to be dead. They're just non-existent, and they're doing absolutely nothing to reintegrate them into the system. And so now those people have no identification, no existence. They can't access anything, and nobody cares. They're not doing anything to rectify the situation. Not only that, but many glitches happened where, you know, property was lost, money was lost, bank accounts are just, they just evaporate overnight. Then it was discovered that this huge program, mind you, there's so many people in India, there were over 50,000 government employees that were working for this program alone to manage the 1.2 billion names that were in this program. They were caught selling the digital IDs to gangsters, to people on the dark web, whoever
Dark web,
wanted.
yeah.
And in fact, a journalist who was investigating this, he went to see how easy it would be. And he bought 1.4 billion digital IDs. Not one digital ID, 1.4 billion people's digital IDs on a thumb drive for $7 USD. $7
Well, that's a bargain.
USD.
Jesus.
Yeah. The government employees that were caught selling the personal data for $7 a thumb drive, nobody was prosecuted. They were just fired. And the really frightening thing is that there continues to be a market for Indian citizens' personal information, all of their private information, not just one bank account, not just one credit score, not just one medical record, everything, including their property. And nothing's being done about it. It's just insecure, and that's just how it is. And so about 1 million so far, about 1 million people have lost their property, their pension, their money, or completely have been erased from existence. And there's no backup plan to allow them to still be treated as citizens of the country. And I
Yes.
learned a lot about this from from a woman who actually lives in India. Her name's Rita Banerjee. And she's an activist, she's a feminist, she's a middle-class Indian citizen, and she wrote an article from her personal experience. And she really brings up at the end why, like, why would they do this? Is this actually convenient? Is this actually something that people wanted? Is this actually something that is good? And one of the things that she pointed out is that, you know, the real wealth that India has right now is data. They don't have oil, they have data. And so essentially, when The Economist declared in 2017 that the world's most valuable asset or resource was no longer oil, but data,
Yeah.
that revelation coincided with the idea that, oh, your government can sell you and all of your fellow citizens basically as digital slaves. I mean, the people of India have had everything that we consider private information, identification, sold as a commodity, which
Yeah,
to
I
me
think
is just, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is it's like a preview that we're getting of something that could, it seems like the government there, was able to like package all of this stuff under one rubric, whereas all of this kind of data that you're talking about, say in America,
Mm-hmm.
exists like that. All your medical records are up somewhere, all of your browsing records are up somewhere with the internet, all your social media posts, all your info, like all of that just getting condensed down under one, ruling system or whatever
It's,
is, this is a kind of a front runner of that.
yeah.
What you didn't mention that I found really alarming about this was that the other side of that system is that the government there in India, they have like sweeping powers to monitor, moderate, and actually like take down, like content that the person might have, put up online or something.
Oh yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ability to censor citizens is also extremely chilling.
Yes, it
Um,
is a kind of like a complete system of control. So, yeah, I mean, there is that element as well. Like, if right now all that is assumed or all that can be proven is that there were glitches and there was illegal selling of information.
right.
But certainly there's also like deliberate misuse and abuse of this information by the government that's available to them at the click of a button. So, yeah,
Mhm.
the second somebody is stepping out of line, the second somebody becomes a problem, for whatever reason, they can be completely destroyed. They can either be deleted from the system entirely, or they can have their finances systematically taken away in a millisecond. Everything that people have worked for is just gone. It's just evaporated.
Yeah, so it's like living under a constant cloud of fear or, apprehension about
Yeah.
that's like that's a terrible burden psychologically
Totalitarianism.
for a
Yeah.
person to live under.
Yeah, it's
So I
crazy.
think that's an interesting take on this too, would be like Pluto and Aquarius representing probably something that's going to like explode as far as like companies that or corporations that start offering. And I'm seeing more and more of this online too, where companies that are selling the ability to protect you
Hmm.
from, identity theft or everything that connotes like that seems to be an industry that's going to very Pluto like industry that's going to grow and grow and grow and grow. And I'm going to call my stock guy
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
some stuff
Yeah.
put there. But thanks for that, Rachel. That is chilling. And again, another wild card with the Pluto Aquarius thing.
Well, it's really important because during Pluto and Capricorn, the global surveillance state really fully flowered. That's what happened from 2008 to 2023, 2024. Not that the pieces weren't in place already to do something like that, but this global surveillance state and the ability to actually do things like that was a condition that formed or fully crystallized when Pluto was in Capricorn, which of course really corresponds to increasing centralized power, increasing control, the one iron fist getting more and more and more to hold on to. And now that Pluto's moved into Aquarius, I see that because that system is in place and because that power is possible, there's going to have to be this huge, fight and sort of revolution and conflict with this force that wants to legitimately like enslave you digitally and wants to exert totalitarian control through all kinds of censorship and threatening your finances and just threatening anything and everything that
Well, I think COVID, my memories of COVID, especially because I had to travel internationally at the
Mhm.
time, was really like a wake-up call about how much I was interwoven into the digital, info landscape. Because I couldn't even travel without having stuff on my phone that, indicated not just my passport, but my medical history, my vaccination. And I remember, like, I think it was when I was in Costa Rica, like going through this gate just to like get on the plane. And then all of a sudden, the facial recognition had triggered something off my face. And then I saw myself for like a millisecond, like this big image of me up on a screen with like all this data like
Mhm.
attached to it. And all it was just something that was set up there that, was scanning my face. It
Mhm.
wasn't like I was showing them anything. I mean, this made other people that travel a lot think, well, this guy's like a hobo or something. Where's he been? But to me, it was like really shocking, just to be walking along and then suddenly you see your face, flash with all. I was just like, Jesus
Yeah,
Christ,
that's like
this is
RoboCop
creepy,
status.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, totally. It
Well, okay, so what do we want? Do we want to take a break and look at the worst astrology month?
I think we could do that. I mean, I would just one thing that just came through is as you two were talking about the um the Indian digital ID scandal was this uh the political Italian political theorist modern day, I think his name is Giorgio Agamben, has his contribution to the discourse is this idea of the homo sacer versus the sovereign. Have either of you familiar? Anybody out there in podcast land? Just comment. I know what you're talking about. Rachel, Frederick.
I remember.
I don't. I don't know.
Okay. This is he wrote an essay on like it's called like on the concept of bare life or bio life, meaning like your life with can he was asking the question like can you actually have a living identity without there being some kind of political structure, basically what we're talking about is in community, can you actually just exist in your community without being tied to this greater digital ID complex, and
Mhm.
the homo sacer is a concept from Roman law. It means like the forsaken man. Essentially, the exile is that you are convicted of a crime so heinous that you're not even worthy to execute as a sacrifice to the gods. So
Jesus.
you're sent outside the city walls to live on your own, never allowed to speak to a Roman citizen ever again. And I mean, when you consider at the time that Rome, was the leading global superpower, at least as far as their estimation was concerned, that was a pretty big deal to not be allowed to speak to a Roman citizen ever again.
Mhm.
And then he contrasted that with the sovereign, which is somebody who is so above the law that the law doesn't apply to them anymore either. So you have the forsaken man who is so below the law that the law no longer applies to him. He's sent outside the city walls and basically just what that's his sentencing is that whatever bandits you see on the side of the road, whatever they do to you, we're not going to run to your protection. And
And
then
what was the above the law one?
is the sovereign, like the
Homo
this
sovereign?
yeah, homo sovereign, or just he
Okay.
just called it the sovereign.
Right.
And I think between like just the amount of like political corruption that we see going on, unsentenced, you could even look at a case like Hunter Biden being an out of control crackhead while his dad was actually passing legislation 20 years ago to ensure that anybody that's buying or selling crack cocaine is going to become the forsaken man, is going to be put below the law.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really crazy to look at this Indian story, where essentially these were how many people did this happen to?
There's 1.4 billion people on the system. There's currently about 1 million that have been recorded that have either lost their money or have slipped through the
And so
cracks.
there's 1 million people just in the blink of an eye that have become essentially digital exiles.
Yeah.
And so this idea, like, I just saw this theory kind of lining up perfectly with the Leo Aquarius axis, as the greatest punishment that you could have uh in a political society is to be an outsider, to be
Hmm.
an exile, to be exiled from the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then the greatest privilege you could have is to be so embedded in the system that you have actually risen above it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's insane that with the blink of an eye, 1.5 million citizens were just turned into exiles. Did-
Yes, these conditions are so extreme. And that's one of the things that I believe is the opportunity being presented to us. This is the stage that has been set. And so, as this transit, which will be approximately 20 years, I mean, there's a very short return to Capricorn from September to November in 2024. But otherwise, Pluto in Aquarius is 20 years. And so, the opportunity is to actually not allow things to get this extreme, to actually have, a human impulse, something that actually creates a world that is supportive to human life, not to robots, to human life, and I
Right.
I resent the fetishization of technology as the key word and the key theme of Aquarius, because technology is supposed to serve humanity and make our life more rich and more efficient, and it's supposed to serve us. And what technology is an idea that comes through as some material invention. But I actually think Aquarius is more about ideas, philosophy, the shift in ideologies, the shift in how people see things, how people interpret things. So, for example, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius that time is associated with the American Revolution, which was won, the revolutionaries against the Empire, which was the British at the time. Um, and the idea of America was stronger than the entire British military. So it really wasn't a battle of technology. It wasn't, obviously, the British had better technology at the time. It was about which idea is stronger, which idea has more resonance, has more power, has more of a future. So it's
Mhm.
still futuristic, but in my opinion, these ideas, this world that technocrats are building, to me, it's dim in its imagination. It serves such a few amount of people on this planet. And so what? So if everyone's the Homo sacer, if everyone's exiled, then the party's outside of the castle gates. And then, civilization and culture can re-emerge if everyone's in exile, which is pretty much where we're at. Like, who really feels included? Who doesn't feel alienated? Who isn't being abused or mistreated in some way? Who hasn't been called names for whatever kind of opinion you have? I mean, it's like, if everyone is outside, then that's where culture reemerges.
Well, look, just symbolically, look at what the technocrats do with their, gazillion dollars. I mean, people like Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Larry Page. I, Zuckerberg owns, like a third of the island of Kauai
Yeah.
now with underground bunker. I mean, just to play off your point of exile and then the people, that have separated themselves out.
Yeah.
And Larry Page just bought another island 2 days ago out near, I think, Puerto Rico. I forget the name of the tech guy. He literally bought the island of Molokai
Mm-hmm.
in the Hawaii chain. And symbolically, these people, it's like, that there's some like primitive fear or something within their psyche about, people coming at them with pitchforks and whatever. So they've got all their bunkers on these islands, and
Yeah.
they're completely exempt
Yeah.
from the common culture and
Yeah.
stuff that they actually kind of destroyed. So I think it's symbolically interesting to watch what these people do
Yeah.
with, all of their money. And it's all
Yeah.
about buying islands
Yeah.
to
And
get on. And
some of them for unspeakable purposes. My God. But yeah, I mean, I feel like one of the great strengths that, all of us can just begin to inculcate within ourselves is, these people are not actually above you. They're not better than you. They're certainly not smarter than the average person. Their vision of the world is, in my opinion, incredibly ugly and dim-witted. And I don't really think that's the direction that the world has to go in. We don't have to go along with that. It's just one mythology, it's one story, it's a religion that many people are completely alienated from. We don't have to believe what they believe about humanity or the future. And I don't believe that AI is I don't think that robots are smarter than human beings. I think that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, to like try and make people, human beings, creative and intelligent and sentient human beings with feelings and consciousness that cannot be quantified, to compare that to the ability of a machine to analyze and quantify and collect data, to aggregate content. I find that just I think it's dim-witted and insulting. So
well,
a
look
machine,
who's promoting it. It's people that
yeah,
are probably on spectrum
yeah,
and are robotic themselves. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is one of the most chilling human beings. God, I've used that word like 8 times today. Talk about Pluto.
yeah,
I mean, if you really like just study him and listen to him, it's almost like an automaton. Same with Elon Musk.
same. I know. I
It-
totally agree, and that's
so
why.
of course they're promoting, because
Yeah.
these would be extensions, of their own fantasy life or whatever.
Yeah,
It's so like out in the open
yeah,
that it is shocking to me. Like you
yeah.
don't really have to look far with the argument,
That's
because
right.
look
That's
at the creators, look at what the origin and source is.
They're delusional,
Okay,
they're bullies, and they're afraid, which is actually a good sign. Bullies always are afraid. So that's the positive about Pluto and Aquarius. Like,
there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then like that's a perfect segue for the worst astrology of the month.
Oh yeah.
The most chilling. No,
The most chilling. Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
This
yeah,
the
we're returning for the people that wrote in by the thousands asking for
Mhm.
a return of the worst astrology
Yeah,
of the
our
month.
inboxes
Yeah.
were flooded. Larry Page actually called me up personally and asked if I wanted to upgrade to the new Google AI email inbox sorter.
Yeah.
There were so many requests for the worst astrology of the month.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well,
Oh,
we're calling it the Pluto and Aquarius triple whammy, I guess. The 1, 2, 3 punch, the jab jab right hook.
how about wham bam? Thank you,
I
ma'am.
like wham bam, thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am.
and give the dates on that,
Yeah, so
Rachel.
we've got okay, so as of this recording, it's February 3rd. So we have on February 5th, Mercury is going to enter Aquarius and conjunct Pluto at
Mhm.
0 degrees. Then that's going to be followed on Valentine's Day on February 14th. Mars is going to enter Aquarius and conjunct Pluto at um 0 degrees, and then 2 days later Venus is going to conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees, and that's
Right. And so we're
February 16th.
choosing the 14th, the Mars Pluto
Yes,
conjunction
yeah.
astrology
That's
of the
kind of
month.
the I when I was looking recently at the zodiac, like at the transits, one of those like transit viewer apps, and I was specifically looking at these transits, these three, with the Mars at the center, and
Hmm.
I was never that big into like turn-based RPGs, but the few that I did play left an impression on me, and I suddenly saw with clarity for a moment that the Zodiac is like this turn-based RPG, and the outer planets, the transpersonals, are like the bosses,
Mm.
and then the traditional planets are like the players. And we're essentially in this, since the discovery of Uranus, we've been in this like nonstop battle against, we've been on, we've basically been playing the boss level on hard mode this whole time. But specifically that February 14th, I almost get this feeling that it's like Mercury and Venus and Mars all like they got together. Like it's like, okay, he's gonna transit, and he's gonna like, he'll cast, I don't know, again, I don't know the lingo of the RPGs well enough, but he'll cast like some kind of weakening spell on Pluto, and then Mars is gonna render some deafening blow, and then Venus is going to come by with some, and finish him off or something.
Hmm.
As far as standing up to bullies are
I
concerned.
see a children's book being written.
Yeah, no, and so
Like
that's how
fairy
it all
tale.
played out. That's how it played out in my mind. I was just looking at it for a second. Yeah, like these like three, Mars is the leader of this like ragtag group of kids. It's like Stephen King, It or something,
Mm.
and like they're all going up, they're gonna go face they're going down to the sewer to face Pennywise, almost, like they're yeah, like they're standing up to a bully here.
But Mars particularly is, the trigger planet. So you follow Mars transits, and when he crosses through another planet, there's always something that gets triggered or activated. So you can almost look at Pluto's entrance into Aquarius in January. It's not lying dormant exactly, but it's been rather quiet. When Mars crosses through Pluto, something's going to get activated, awakened, or triggered. And unfortunately, the combination of Mars and Pluto tends to be kind of dangerous, a dangerous edge, because Mars is the planet of conflicts and war and violence and attacks. And I'm not promising that everybody's going to experience that in their personal life. But on the grander scale of what unfolds following this Valentine's Day, we do see something aggressive and violent, something explosive, a lot of strife. And of course, to me, it looks like some kind of confrontation with this machine,
Mhm.
the global surveillance state, and everything it represents, its many, many tentacles. What do
I,
you think, Frederick?
I think, yeah, it is very bestial energy, the
Mhm.
Mars, Pluto. Also, for people wanting to work with it in a constructive way, I would say whatever you have going on in your life now that requires like a all or nothing,
Mm.
push, the February 14th would be a great day to like light the fuse on that and put all of that oomph, behind something. I
Yeah.
think on a mundane astrology level, world affairs level, I'm sort of curious to see what's happening down in Texas at the border with the convoys and the truckers for God and all of the mayhem going on down there. Aquarius has a lot to do with borders because it represents basically outside of borders, which is a unified, whole of something. So borders become highlighted when there's stuff in Aquarius like this transit. And then I just see the potential for the immigration issue to really like explode. And again, that tribalism that people have around this particular issue or theme can really get, bestial with a transit like the Mars Pluto. But I think, what would you say, Andre and Rachel, about how to work with that in a way that isn't destructive, and also acknowledging that really any of the transits at any time within the solar system, as interpreted by astrology, are really in service of just natural phenomenon that's moving,
Um,
happening, and cycles unfolding, and going about. It's really not given a moral tint like we tend to do as human beings, looking at things good as through a good and bad lens.
right. Well, I would definitely look at it from like an alchemical perspective. The planet Mars is associated with the process of separation.
Right.
And in the laboratory alchemy, separation is separating the, dross from the rich or valuable material. But from the perspective of our own experience, separation is actually associated with critical thinking because it's our ability to weigh the pros and cons, to analyze, that actually represents separation. Alchemically, we're sifting, we're sorting, we're considering, perhaps we're letting some things go because they've been revealed to be untrue or dross, something that's no longer valuable to us, some kind of dross. And so for me, I see the Mars Pluto conjunction as a very valuable opportunity to use critical thinking to make a very important choice, to actually decide which, like you said, which direction you want to go, what you're going to devote your energies to with a lot of intensity. And in
Yeah,
order to do
passion.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, passion, intensity, focus. And in order to do that, you must make a decision, and that means that you've cut something away. It means that you've severed something so that you can put all your energy towards another. And so a very big decision, a big choice, cutting something out so that you can put full force into another thing. You could let go of a bad habit. That's certainly something that would be good. Cut away excess baggage, excess weight. Or it could be something more subtle like reconsidering a book, an issue, an idea, a philosophical perspective, and assessing it from a more critical perspective, meaning that not that you're just judging it, but that you're actually using judgment to assess its value. So that's what I see as a positive for
Great.
Mars
A
conjunct
great
Pluto.
way, great summation. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on that and add the Robert Anton Wilson-esque exercise of spending an hour or even a day uh aligning yourself with the you know your opposing political theory
Mm-hmm.
and entering into the reality tunnel or the mindset and reading uh you know listening to Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck or any of those guys with or if you're on the other end of the political spectrum, watching MSNBC
Or
or
read communist
yeah,
pamphlets or
or reading
feminist
Jacobin,
pamphlets. Yeah.
Jacobin.com or something. It's not just an open mind, and it's not just with the mind to analyze, to attack, to basically to learn, to learn your enemy's battle plan, but actually um doing the method acting exercise of the way Jim Carrey was Andy Kaufman for the whole time he was shooting Man on the Moon, like living a day as a MAGA Republican. And I've done this many times in my life. It drives my friends crazy, especially like my hippie friends when I was, play acting as a Wall Street trader. And I'd get invited to a fracking protest, and I'd tell them, hey, there's a lot of good money in that, you oughta take some of your trust fund and invest. But no, I think it's a really useful exercise because it helps you see not so much see the enemy or the opposition in a better light, but it helps see yourself in a better light. And it really helps you for me, it's always helped me get to the core of why I hold certain convictions. So that it's somewhere, it's actually beyond dogma, it's beyond doctrine, it's beyond peer pressure or social agreement. And it's actually like, no, I actually do think that um I hold this conviction, I hold this belief with some kind of real deeper moral compass. For me, what broke me from that experiment was my financial advisor, trying to push me into investing in oil when I made it clear I wanted to invest in clean energy. And she gave me the age-old adage of Wall Street adage: do you want to be right or do you want to make money?
Mm-hmm.
And that got me to really start reflecting deep down inside. Like, oh, it's like, okay, game over. I had to say the safe word. I said the safe word, game over. And now it's really time for me to analyze, well, what did I learn in these last 6 months of, play acting as a Wall Street trader, getting into that mindset, playing that role, and how has it actually, what false beliefs was I holding because I felt a certain social pressure to hold them, and what beliefs did I hold that were actually true
Mhm.
because it's just like fundamentally this is who I am in my core. This is something that can't be bought and sold with a digital ID.
And what
This
actually stands up to pressure
Yeah,
and
and
opposition
opposition,
and
yeah.
adversity and
And I think too, for that exercise to really work uh, and have impact, it's got to, the emotional core of whatever it is you're trying to, align with. It's generally opposite your normal point of view. I think that's the real potency of it, is when you get into the feeling tenor, because that's
Exactly.
what I think drives so much of, especially like the political polarity and stuff like that, trying to, understand that emotional core and the feelings around, with the, say, issue with immigration, and what
Mhm.
is it about, outsiders coming in and encroaching on me, and, you know, and then trying to feel what that's about. I think then it moves it out of the head and then more to the heart,
Very
Mhm.
good point. Yeah.
you know.
Excellent point. Well, yeah, that's where the whole idea of it being like method acting comes in, is that
Right.
yeah, like you actually are getting into character, and you
Mm.
can't be in character if you're not fully embodied in body, mind, and soul.
And you can't learn anything new if you're completely conditioned,
Yeah.
which is so easy in our world now, everybody. We're trapped in these echo chambers and we only hear people agreeing with us, and then we get lost.
Yeah. And it's really, I have to give props to people that do try to, like, run down the middle between the two extremes,
Mm.
because it, you know, I think that, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, you could have a conversation with someone and bring something up that wasn't in the bubble. And there
Mhm.
would be some, you know, it would be more porous, like
Mhm.
people could hear things. But now, my God, it's like, I was talking to a friend the other night, and I mentioned something that was divergent from the, in this sense, liberal ideology and all that. And, it was, he could just barely contain himself. Oh my God, that's like Russian propaganda or,
Mhm.
it's just like, so my hat's off to anyone who's trying to maneuver the middle path through this crazy town phase that we're in right now. But I think that's a good place to wrap up. What do
I
you
think
guys feel?
excellent place to wrap up.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you guys think in podcast land? Is that a good place to wrap up? Type 1 if you agree. Type 2 if you want more.
All right.
I know I should have learned last time to not engage the audience like this,
Oh my
but
God, Audrey.
I guess I'm a sadist or masochist.
Mhm.
Oh, they love us. My God,
Yeah.
I can't get enough.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, great meeting up again.
Yep.
And
Same.
all the best to everyone in our audience. And I guess we'll see you with our next show, which is with astrologer Jessica Murray is going to join us on the podcast. And we're going to look at a lot of probably some more Pluto themes, stuff with the election coming up, and just sort of deep dive her knowledge base. She's such an incredible culture reader, astrologer.
I'm
So
I'm
excited.
so excited. Yeah, that's gonna be a great episode. It's also we're gonna be breaking new ground because it's gonna be our first episode with a guest.
She's a
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
it's gonna be a treat. So stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right, you guys.
All right.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.